So, although Sinaloa generates a lot of proceeds, let's say they make $4 billion in a year in profits, but that's $4 billion spread out over 60 organizations. That means this group makes 75 million, this group makes 200, this group makes 50. Nobody had the money independently to come up with 450 million. So they had to shift. They pivoted from trafficking primarily in cocaine to a more lucrative compound. That's where you got the explosion in crystal methamphetamine, because the crystal has a 900% return on investment, whereas the coke has a 200% return on investment. And we know that this happened because WikiLeaks disclosed the cables that were sent from the embassy in Mexico to the State Department in DC. Just 1 year after the implementation of the kingpin strategy, you had a 500% increase in crystal. Well, they had to take their capital and allocate it in a more lucrative venture. 7 years later, you had another pivot. This is where the new generation, after the 3 attempts on Menchel, they needed to raise more capital. They had to buy more protection. So they pivoted from the crystal to the Fenny. Well, Fenny is 2,400% return on investment. So you're a businessman, you've got so much capital that you could allocate. Maybe you want to build a new studio, maybe you want to get new cameras, maybe you want to get new software. You have to make a decision. How are you going to allocate your capital in the most rational manner? So just to keep it easier for your audience, if you've got $1 million, are you going to invest it in an operation that'll get you back 3? Or a second operation, which will get you back 9? Or a third operation, which will get you back 24 million? If you go with the third option, you're trafficking Fenny. And so from the trafficking perspective, not the American side, but from the trafficking perspective in Mexico, allocating the capital into Fenny is the most rational move. So when you're dealing with men who are making decisions based on money, you're not talking to terrorists. There's not a single cartel guy that's going to put a suicide vest on and blow himself up. They love the cars, they love the women, they love their lives, they love their houses. And so you can maneuver a man whose decisions are based on financial considerations. And that's what we see Mr. Trump actually trying to do. Anybody with an understanding of narco-economics and Mexican trafficking culture can clearly see what the strategy is.
Let me ask about, I have another guest who's coming on. He's a, okay. I've had 2 CIA agents recently, former.
Oh, okay.
One of them talked about, she confirmed that there has been some covert operations in Mexico. And
sure.
She didn't give me more than that, just says she can confirm.
Sure.
And then I have this other gentleman who I'm going to ask him some deeper questions with CIA's involvement. What are some thoughts on CIA's involvement with the cartels? And what is the question you want me to ask him?
What was the effort made right after 9/11 that the CIA, well, I don't know if they'll acknowledge it, but I spoke with numerous individuals after 9/11, and everyone said they shut down the border to make sure no Arabs got across.
Yes,
like there was a dialogue there where they were.
Yeah, there was a dialogue. There was a dialogue, and I believe it was with Sinaloa Cartel.
Yeah,
and it was to ask them to it was some kind of partnership or some kind of agreement with the CIA and the cartel that's been confirmed.
Oh, it had been? Okay, yes. Interesting. Last week there was a big article in the New York Times where they broke the fact that the CIA has been having these drone flights over Mexico.
Yes. That's what my interview was essentially that's what we focused on with her.
What was interesting about that, though, is, I make it a point of corroborating the information that I learned, and I corroborated through open source material. And so there was a conversation I had a few years ago with one of the cartel guys, and he indicated that they had moved the Fenny labs, the main ones, out of Sinaloa. So they had one in Oaxaca, which is way south in Mexico. And then they had another one in Guatemala. And so when I read the New York Times article and I pulled up other additional articles, one of them had a map of where they're flying over. You're not even flying over the right area. You're in the wrong country. And so, but before I came forward on this, now I jumped on open source material and I started doing research, Fenny, Sinaloa, Guatemala, and boom, up pops criminal prosecutions where the Guzman's organization's representative in New York was distributing 1,000 kilos of Fentanyl, and he had 1,000 kilos for distribution, and that the Fentanyl had originated in Guatemala. So this is, I think the value that I bring to the table is I have a deep understanding of the operations, and I'm able to independently take information from open source and put it together in a presentable, digestible manner for people to understand what's actually going on. Like the conversation about the Guatemala thing was just us talking on the yard while we're walking laps. It didn't become relevant until last week when I saw the article and like, uh-oh, let me see if I can confirm that, because now it triggered the recollection of that discussion. And so, yeah, sure, here, boom, the largest Sinaloa lab for Fentanyl is in Guatemala. And so I'm sure, look, the Navy SEAL that I spoke with last week told me that the intelligence community doesn't have to rely on me to make statements on a podcast. Like, I have no doubt that they know. The FBI. So when they tell us that they're operating in Mexico, you can rest assured they're in Guatemala. They're in Honduras. Because this is information that's known to the FBI, it's known to the DEA, because it's appearing in federal indictments. So unless there's just a massive breakdown in communication between our law enforcement agencies, I have no doubt that the depth of the CIA's involvement is at a much deeper level. Like the information that got disclosed in those leaks, our government has the names of every one of those officers. There's literally lists of officers that are dirty, identifying the amount of money they're getting paid and which organization and which cartel was paying. Well, that's the kind of leverage that we could use. We can let the Mexican authorities know, hey, look, we're prepared to indict these 700 officers. Get your people in line. Because the goal ultimately is to stop the Fentanyl.
Yeah.
And so long as that's the goal, you need leverage. Not leverage over the criminals. They're criminals. You need leverage over the individuals providing the protection that allows those structures to operate. I had previously sent you one of those schematics. This is the Sinaloa Cartel. It's 44 organizations. This is as of last year. It's 44 organizations spanning 15 states. There are no comparable structures in the United States.